Hello, it's me again. In this video, I'd like to introduce a new technology that is deemed to support second language learning called corpus linguistics. In today's world, technology and computers have become one of the main aspects of human life. No one can deny the fact that technology has a great effect on the way people live their lives. However, according to Breyer in 2008, teaching is one of the areas where technology has not had a strong impact. Corpus linguistics is one of the technology-based tools that could be very useful in teaching, but still has not been widely used and tested. Nevertheless, in the last 30 years, the use of corpora in classroom has started to develop. A lot of research has been conducted to examine the effectiveness of using corpus linguistics as a teaching technique to highlight how native speakers of English use certain language forms, vocabulary items, and expressions. Medelliner in 2001 explained that the use of authentic and real-life examples with second language learner is more beneficial than examples that are made up by the teacher and do not simulate real-life use of the language. Another benefit of using corpora for language teaching is that it gives students a chance to actually work with the language and analyze it. Also, corpora has started to be used in language classroom. Valley in 2008 accused that more research needs to be done to provide evidence that corpora are useful for language learning. According to the research, many studies have been conducted to explore the different types of corpus-based activities. What is new in Valley study is that it takes into consideration the students and the benefits they get from using corpora. To fill this research gap, Valley first carried out a study on 19 EAP students to find out if corpora have developed student language proficiency. She investigated how corpora improved student vocabulary and grammar. In addition, she examined the attitudes of students toward using corpora in language learning. In other words, Valley explored whether they prefer to use corpora or traditional tools like dictionaries and grammar books. Lastly, the researcher pointed out the problem that might face students while using corpora. During the 14 weeks of the study, participants attended 4 hours of instruction each week. 2 hours were dedicated to introducing the student to the theoretical background of corpora. Research done on the use of corpora in classrooms, and other reading that raised the awareness of the student to the use of corpora. As for the other 2 hours, students spent time in computer labs looking at corpora, learning how to use them, and how to search for certain language structures. At the beginning, they were given guided activity to search for a certain problematic language area. Towards the end of the study, however, participants were asked to submit a project where they were given the freedom to choose any language feature, search for it in corpus, and write a paper about the findings. To collect the data, Valley chose a qualitative design. She administered a questionnaire at the beginning of the study to find out whether they know what corpora are and whether they like to learn languages to CALL or to the traditional tools. The research also asked the students to submit a project at the end of the study, where participants apply everything they learned about corpora. Attached to this project, students were asked to fill out a log. In the log, the students reflected on the experience of using a corpus, the strategies they used to analyze the findings, and how corpora added to their knowledge about the language features they are researching. This project was then analyzed to highlight the benefits of each student. Last but not least, Valley chose 5 students and have an in-depth discussion with them. The discussion aimed at exploring student attitudes more. Findings revealed that most of the participants agreed that corpora are very beneficial for their language learning, and they would depend on them for future reference. Valley found out that corpora help students to learn about certain language uses that were not available in any of the traditional tools. In addition, corpora allows students to examine these language features in context. Findings also suggested that even the students who like to use dictionaries and grammar books as references benefited from corpora and use them as a complement to these traditional tools. Another benefit was the fact that corpora helps students to get a broader view of language. For example, corpora could compare spoken and written languages. On the other hand, corpora helps their own disadvantages as well. One disadvantage is that some corpora software is not available for the students. That's why the research recommended that teachers introduce the students to free corpora online. Another obstacle is that when searching any corpus, students are confused because of large amounts of research results. Therefore, Valley suggested that teacher needs to simplify this finding for those students with limited experience using corpora. Research has proven that corpora could help improve student language proficiency. However, because corpora is relatively new trend in teaching, one can still find teachers who are skeptical with regards to corpora and whether they could be used to teach challenging language features such as models and idioms. Therefore, Simpson and Mendes in 2003 do not focus on using corpora for planning activities and tasks in their studies. They instead highlight the usefulness of using corpora analysis to get ideas about the problems that non-native speakers of English encounter while writing and studying in English. Simpson and Mendes in 2003, on the other hand, investigated the usefulness of corpora in acquiring idioms. They wanted to explore whether idioms appear in corpora or not. They examined a 1 million word corpus that included academic spoken English. They found that idioms are found in corpora, and that corpora could be used to design teaching materials. Researchers also argue that corpora provides students with information about pragmatic use of idioms. Moreover, corpora provides students with authentic context, which also means that students will learn language in context, not in isolation. Although the previously reviewed studies agreed that corpora are effective in language teaching, other studies highlighted that there are certain challenges that teachers may face when using corpora. Teachers should keep these challenges in mind because they could affect the effectiveness of using corpora in language teaching. For example, Madeleiner in 2001 attempted to use a well-established corpus in order to teach his students the differences between seemingly synonymous words in English. The researcher was asked by one of his Japanese students to explain the difference between ruin and destroy. He realized that he could not fully explain the difference to her because rather than explaining the difference in meaning, he wanted to show how the two words are used to communicate ideas. The researcher, with the help of another EFL teacher, started the experiment with 6 Year 3 Japanese high school students who needed to pass a standardized test in Japan that qualified students for good social, educational, and professional positions. The researcher decided to use corpus concordant lines as a way to explore non-native speakers of English to how native speakers contextualize and use problematic words. The choice of which corpus to use was not very easy, as the researcher was looking for a corpus of both manageable in size and enough instances with the target words. The researcher also wanted to use a corpus that would not very technical, so that would be very interesting for the student. The Lancaster, Oslo, Bergen, or the LOB for short, would finally chosen to use with the students. The experiment considered 5 stages. During the first stage, students were involved in a simple exercise using dictionary. Then, they were asked to examine concordant lines and see how the words are used. After that, they were given a closed exercise. At the stage number 4, they were asked to produce sentences using these words. Finally, they have to formulate rules of using the target words. The result of the study showed that using concordant lines was not very useful for the student for a number of reasons. First, students were not used to such a teaching methodology in which they were given something to look at and then report on. Second, the main goal for the student was to pass the exam. Knowledge of the word meanings was more important for them than how to use the words. This article showed that the role of instructor and researcher is crucial when it comes to using corpus-based activities. In some conditions, teachers can use concordant lines to extract real-life instances and use them with the student rather than ask the student to examine the pages of sentence. If this is to be done, it should be done with more proficient, advanced learners who are interested in how language works. Unlike the previous study, Fuentes and Rosuki in 2002 had a different context for using corpora to teach English. The researcher proposed a model for integrating corpus-based exercise in ESP classrooms. Although this is not a model of syllable design, it is good to include it in this review because it gives a number of suggestions for tasks that could be used in ESP classes. He mainly focused the business and information technology, which integrates ESP skills with EAP or English for academic purposes skills. The use of corpus in this class basically revolves around the idea that students need to build some kind of language competence through active task completion, so that they use such knowledge to fulfill the requirements of the task of the course. The tasks of the course include a number of writing tasks and presentations. For sub-tasks, students need to build up a repertoire of technical terms and possible collocations. A small corpus with a limited number of instances is recommended to be used, and it will be focused on the academic fields that the student will be learning. Therefore, researchers think that the corpus of business and information technology, or BIT for short, could be used. Some of the activities that could be used to help students become aware of certain collocation is concordant analysis. Students can explore a number of words that are frequent in the field of IT. Then, they can explore the collocation of such words. Another idea is to have students compare instances in the BIT corpus with the instances in other corpora that are either specialized ones like SIT or Information Science and Technology corpus, or generalize the BNC, or in other words, the British National Corpus. Students can then see how such words are used technically and generally by native speakers of English. By doing so, students become aware of lexical trends that are useful when it comes to completing course tasks. After students are given the chance to explore the different corpora, worksheets can be designed by the teacher to guide them. They could be given worksheets which they have to complete by finding words that correlate with others. They could also be given a number of chunks and then asked to match them with textile or writing genres. The research gives ideas of good corpus-based activities that could be used with high, intermediate, and advanced students. Like Breyer in 2008, this study proves that It is the role of the teacher to align the level of activities with the ability level of the EFL student he or she teaching. To sum up, it's become clear that Coursera had a big potential in language classrooms. It has been proven that Coursera is beneficial, but there are certain challenges that any teacher needs to keep in mind before using Coursera. Both teachers and students need to properly apply.
Both teachers.
Both teachers and students need to properly train on how to use Coursera. It is a role of the teacher to simplify corpus findings at the beginning until students get a better understanding of how to screen the corpus findings and analyze them. Otherwise, the process will become very confusing. One of the challenges that has been discussed in the previous review is the fact that designing corpus by activity is very difficult. In addition, it's very beneficial that teachers have ideas about these activities. Therefore, the second part of this paper will focus on how to use Coursera to teach different language features.